today what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time kind of on a high level review of the QuickBooks Online product that's fairly new versus the residential desktop program, which has been around for a decade or more probably, for decades. But the QuickBooks Online program is something that QuickBooks is really starting to push these days for people to make the switch over to it. And a lot of our clients here at our firm have found, we get this question over and over and over, should we be making the switch or not? And we thought it was best to do a quick webinar for everybody so that they could have a good idea as to what are you giving up when you move to QuickBooks Online and what do you gain. As a quick overview, the two products, while they both have QuickBooks in the name, are fairly different. The functionality is primarily the same, but there's a lot of major differences. There is a learning curve if you're used to using the regular QuickBooks desktop program relative to using the QuickBooks residential program that you've been using for a long time. The interface is different, how it works is different, and therefore if you are going to make the switch, you need to plan on kind of a learning curve between how much time it takes you to do something now versus how much time it's going to take you for the first few months going forward with the new program. That being said, there is a lot of benefits to the QuickBooks Online program that the desktop program does not have. And it really, when it comes down to it, when you're thinking about which version is best for me, the way I kind of like to think of it as is do you want to continue to use your accounting program the way you have over the next, the past 10 years, or do you want to use it how more and more people today are using software as a whole, meaning cloud-based, integrated with your smartphone, your tablet, access it anywhere, no matter what the device you have, and utilize other applications that can back into your QuickBooks to make it run more seamlessly than ever before. So it's really a matter of, do I want to use it the way I've always used it, or do I want to use it in a new way, knowing that there is going to be some hiccups along the way when you're making the transition over. And to be honest, there is no, if you're this type of company, one's great. If you're another type of company, this one's better. It really comes down to the individual company, which one is better for you. So what we're hoping to accomplish with this presentation is to kind of go through the pros and cons with everyone so that they will have an idea as to how their company aligns with the benefits of both. So the way this is going to be structured is, first we're going to talk about the QuickBooks desktop program, which I'm assuming most of the listeners are using right now relative to everyone out, that there's not too many people out there. Most people are using the desktop program. I normally run across too many people that are using the QuickBooks Online program and say, hey, should I switch to the desktop? It's normally desktop people that are questioning, should we be switching to the QuickBooks Online version? 10 years from now, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't know that the desktop program is going to exist because more and more softwares are moving to software as a service and moving it online with the cloud. So it's also a question of, do we make the jump now, or do we wait for QuickBooks to fine-tune this online program? So let's kind of jump in real quick and take a look at, let's start with the QuickBooks desktop. And what are some of the advantages that the QuickBooks desktop has relative to the online program? The first one is the easy one, I think, is that it's just familiar. If you've been using the QuickBooks desktop program for multiple years and multiple year ends for your company, there's a familiarity factor, and a lot of people that I know have made the switch over to QuickBooks Online. They don't like it because it's not the same. They've always been happy with what they've had and the familiarity, and they end up going back to the QuickBooks desktop version. One of the nice things that QuickBooks does allow in this is that QuickBooks does allow you to go back and forth. If you move from the QuickBooks desktop to the QuickBooks Online program, you can move back. It's not that you're stuck in the online program, which is one of the things that I really appreciate that they did, because historically with other software vendors, normally once you move to the cloud, it's very difficult then to come back. So that is one major difference between the two. Is it flawless every single time? No, but it is fairly easy. I have moved our organization here at JAG-PC. We have moved people from QuickBooks Online back to residential, and for the most part, it's not too bad. Probably an hour or two of your time to move it back, and then making sure everything worked correctly. When you go through that process, there is some things that you lose, but it's not that it's impossible. But I think, so when it comes to the advantage of QuickBooks Desktop, familiarity with the program is great. If you're familiar with it, knowing, a lot of people don't like change, and QuickBooks Online is definitely going to be a fairly big change for your organization or company that you're running. So I think familiarity is one of the big advantages. Another advantage that I hear people over and over talk about is, and I'm calling this on the slide, control within your company. But what I mean by that is you can control who uses QuickBooks in the residential desktop program. You can control your users on the online program. But the one thing you can't control is the access point control, like you can with the QuickBooks Desktop program. And what I mean by that is, when you have the desktop program, the only way that someone can access your file is actually to be able to see the file. So if you're for instance, in a server environment, if you are not a computer that is located on that network, they're not going to be able to access the QuickBooks file. Because of that, there are some people who just would prefer to have it that way. They only want people looking at their accounting records and their books when they're physically on site, or there's some sort of VPN that allows them to do it remotely. But typically it's a computer that's issued by the company that you are able to control. So therefore, for instance, if you would terminate an employee and you forget to switch the password on their account, if they don't have their laptop or they don't have the actual physical control to get to your server, your QuickBooks file is still safe. This is a pro for some people, whereas a lot of people, this is actually one of the big disadvantages of using the desktop program, because they want their employees to have the freedom to be able to use QuickBooks anywhere, which is what the QuickBooks Online program does. The QuickBooks Online program allows you to access things anywhere on any machine at any time. So it really comes down to, for your company or organization, what is it that you want? Do you want to have complete control as to the access point or not? And that's one of the things. But a lot of people, like I said, they do think this is a plus. This, along with that, then comes down to printing controls. If I can make it that you can only access your program within my walls of my company, due to it being based on a server or on their local hard drive, I can also control whether you're able to print things. Because if you're going to print, it's going to come off your printers, and therefore you're going to have some control over that. The QuickBooks Online program, they could go home, print it themselves, and have copies of backup your accounting records outside of the company that you may not want them to have. Again, it really comes down to what kind of controls, what do you care about your people being able to access outside of your organization versus inside. Again, both printing controls, access point, both of them though at the same time could be considered a weakness versus a plus. It really depends on your organization and how you see it. The QuickBooks Desktop program, the third point here that I'm going to make, and this is going to be, I'm going to come back to it a little bit when we talk about the QuickBooks Online program, but one of the benefits of the desktop program is that the speed of the program is not dependent upon how fast your internet is. Because the QuickBooks Online program is completely online, your internet speed will dictate how fast the program runs. If you have a slow connection, your program will run very slow. But on a QuickBooks Desktop program, it's based upon the speed of your computer. So therefore, most people are using, in business, they're using business class machines. They're going to run QuickBooks extremely fast. And for people that are doing a lot of transactions and inputting manually a lot of transactions, they're going to find that the QuickBooks Desktop program is a lot faster versus the QuickBooks Online program. And in the end, we're going to get back to why this could be, why the QuickBooks Online, while it can be slow, how you can actually make it really fast and actually faster than the desktop. But for people who are manually entering transactions like they have been for the past 10, 20 years, QuickBooks Desktop, if you're doing a lot of that, is the program for you, because if not, you're going to get frustrated by the screen refresh rate, those types of things. It's just really going to be frustrating for you on the QuickBooks Online. The last big benefit to the QuickBooks Desktop for a lot of people is it can be more cost effective on an annual basis. And what I mean by that is QuickBooks Desktop, once you purchase the software, you can use it pretty much indefinitely. Now, QuickBooks only supports two different, you can only use a program for 2 years where it's actually supported by QuickBooks, but theoretically, even with that, you can buy the program every other year. The QuickBooks Online program requires a monthly fee, which roughly equates to the price of 1 year of the desktop program. But because you're having to do it on a monthly basis, you're effectively buying the QuickBooks program every single year. So by doing that, in the end, you end up paying more for the QuickBooks Online program relative to the QuickBooks Desktop. So therefore, the QuickBooks Desktop can be more cost effective. And those are the big four things I think that we find with the QuickBooks Residential Desktop program that are, why people choose to stay with it relative to move over to the QuickBooks Online. The disadvantage, though, of the QuickBooks Desktop program are going to go along with a lot of the things that people get frustrated when they think of how things can work in today's environment where we have a lot of cloud-based applications, those types of things. The first, QuickBooks Desktop can be expensive to make work on multiple devices. For instance, if you're starting a company and you want to have multiple people working on a QuickBooks file and you do not want to set up a server environment, which many companies these days are not having a server environment. They're using things like Box and Dropbox to house their files, and they're using other ways like Office 365 for their emails and their document management, those types of things. If you're going to do that, but you want to use QuickBooks Desktop version, it's expensive because in the end, you still need to set up some sort of peer-to-peer or server environment so that everybody can actually see the QuickBooks file. So therefore, if you're, depending on how you're working within your office, or if every 5 years you're redoing your server and you're questioning, do we need to do the server? QuickBooks Desktop, if you're going to have multiple devices, especially if I'm saying multiple devices or multiple users on multiple devices, it's a disadvantage to have the desktop program because you're going to have to buy some additional hardware to make everything work. Second, it's going to be kind of the opposite of what we talked about earlier. One of the disadvantages people find is that it's tied to the computer or network which hosts the QuickBooks file. You're only going to be able to use, for instance, your work laptop or work desktop computer that actually houses the actual file, or it's going to have to be a computer that can actually attach to the network so you can see the file. Therefore, you're going to be limited as to what it is that you can actually, where you can work, and relative to the online program. Third, in this environment that we have today, many people are like to be exclusively PC. They like to be Mac. A lot of people are finding when they go out and hire new people, especially from a younger generation, Mac is definitely the preferred computer environment. But one of the disadvantages of QuickBooks Desktop is that you have to be one or the other. There is no mixing of the two. If you run a QuickBooks Desktop program and you have a PC-based program, which is by far the more robust versus the Mac QuickBooks program, they do have a Mac desktop program. We just here at JagPC don't find it quite as robust as some of the premier versions that you're going to find of the desktop QuickBooks for PC. But you're going to be limited to one or the other. You're not going to be able to go back and forth and having some people work on Macs, some work on PCs. For the Mac people, there are workarounds using virtual machines on the Mac, but again, it adds to the cost just to be able to use the QuickBooks program. So in the end, that's another, like I said, disadvantage of the QuickBooks Desktop. Fourth, the next thing is that, and this is more of the new how people work today. QuickBooks Desktop does not work with most cloud-based applications. QuickBooks has built in some, but when it comes to the QuickBooks Online, you're going to be able to have a lot more cloud-based applications that help you work with other applications that might benefit your company, and they will back end into the QuickBooks, not making it that you don't have to necessarily double enter transactions. And we'll talk about some of these, how the QuickBooks does that online here in a little while. Number 5, it doesn't work with an iPad, doesn't work with tablets, smartphones, iPhone, Android, you name it, it doesn't work with it. QuickBooks Desktop, again, traditional, the way you used to do accounting. For people who are more mobile, I know people now that run around with their business, run their businesses from an iPad. They don't even carry, a typical laptop with them anymore. If you're going to be using the QuickBooks Desktop, this is not a great solution. Last, QuickBooks Desktop, in order to get new features, this QuickBooks comes out with them, you're going to have to go out and purchase a new program. So every year you're going to have to upgrade in order to get those new applications. QuickBooks Online is the new application. They have new features that come out, they just roll out. Because you're paying that monthly fee, you always have the latest and greatest version. Whereas the QuickBooks Desktop version, that's not going to be the case. You're actually going to have to spend money in order to get those new versions. Now, in the end, like I said, you're going to be spending the same amount of money from the online to the desktop. But if you're someone who always wants to have the latest and greatest, QuickBooks Desktop is definitely the one that's going to take longer to implement those changes. So, why in the world would I move to QuickBooks Online? I'm familiar with the program. I like it. Well, I want to talk about some of the benefits that you're going to get with QuickBooks Online. First thing that most people love, it works anywhere I have an internet connection. If I have an internet connection and I have a browser, I can be on my QuickBooks. I can be at home on my home computer. I can be on my iPad. I can be anywhere. I could be sitting in the Caribbean on the beach with my iPad and still be able to invoice someone that I forgot to do, send an invoice before I left. So that is one of the big benefits of QuickBooks Online. It works anywhere on any machine. So therefore, even my employees, when they go home, they didn't take their work computer with me, and they need to get something done, they can do it anywhere. Second, you can have a mix of PC and Mac environments. The program works on numerous browsers. It works on Chrome. It works on Internet Explorer. It works on, like I said, numerous others. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be on a PC and you can be on a Mac. It really doesn't matter. So if you're a person that wants to use a Mac and others at your work want to use a PC, QuickBooks Online, it does not matter because you're using a web browser. One of the other big advantages to QuickBooks Online is your accountant can have access to your files simultaneously all year. For those of you out there who have clients that you're working with your accountants on a month-by-month basis, how many times have you had to sit there and do a backup and send it over to your client and those types of things, and you end up having to spend all this time sending things to your client, your accountant. Sometimes the files don't restore, you're doing multiple, or something happens to your file when you send the QuickBooks backup file. With QuickBooks Online, you can just sit there and set up and say, hey, my accountant is so-and-so, and from that, they allow your accountant, every license with the QuickBooks Online comes with an access that your accountant can have to your files. So at any point in time, if you have a question, you can literally say, hey, can you log on and take a look at this? And we can be looking at this together. It's one of the big advantages that QuickBooks Online has. And again, this is because it's an open environment. It's cloud-based software that your accountant can access those files anytime that they need to. Fourth, works with iPads and other tablets. You can also use the QuickBooks app for iPhone and Android, which gives you additional functionality. Now, the apps aren't complete functionality, but they allow you to do things like see some reports, those types of things. It will completely work with an iPad and the web browser. So you can pretty much do anything you want with an iPad, and I have seen clients that literally will do their QuickBooks on their iPads. So in the end, this is a great functionality. Again, if you don't want to travel with a laptop, you can still take your iPad. I don't know how much people are actually using iPads to do all their accounting, just due to the small screen. But at the same time, it gives you that flexibility that if you're out and you realize that you need to send someone an estimate, you need to send someone a bill, you need to send something, you need to look up someone's, contact information that you have in your QuickBooks, everything's going to be right there. And that's one of the great things. The next thing is, I think, the most important of all the things to go over with the QuickBooks Online when it comes to a benefit. And this is where I really think that QuickBooks Online is somewhat cutting edge. is that it works with over 300 cloud-based apps, and this number keeps growing. And what I mean by that is I'm going to walk you through two here as an example, how this all works to make your life a little bit easier, and where it's going to keep you from necessarily running transactional data all the time in your QuickBooks, and kind of think about doing things in your accounting a slightly different way. So the first one I want to talk about is like Bill.com. Bill.com is another cloud-based software that lets you automate your bill pay process and make everything completely paperless. Bill.com allows you to upload or have your clients send to you PDF versions of your bill, and allow it to, from that point, for you to easily, and it will also automate this over time, address what the transaction is, what account should be billed to, and also allows for people to have approvals and sign-offs. So if a bill comes into someone's, say, office manager, they're able to upload it to Bill.com. And in order for they, for instance, that for your accountant that's in-house to write a bill, we know that the CEO has to approve the bill. So it would then go to, send an email letting them know you've got bills to approve. That person then approves the bill online. They have a PDF copy of the bill. They approve it, and from there it will set up within your organization however you want. It would, for instance, go to the accountant who says now it's approved to pay. From Bill.com, then you can actually have it automatically pay the bill without even having to write a check. It does it through EFT or online bill pay. It's all hooked up into your bank account and so forth, making it something that they click, the bill's paid, it's all been approved. The great thing about this is it saves then your PDFs, it organizes them, and it also gives, for your auditors, for those of you who have to be audited, a paper trail of still how it was approved, the correct approvals, and in some respects it's actually more control over the paper approvals because it won't go to the person to cut the check unless the person has approved it. So there's different things that there's actually more controls in place even though it's paperless. This is more than fine from an auditor's perspective because it's still, the system itself has the proper checks and balances, no different than a paper system. In some respects, I think it's even a little bit more secure than a paper system. The great thing about this is this whole system is taking place at the same time. It is still back-ending into your QuickBooks, meaning when the bill comes in and it gets approved, it's being automatically updated to your QuickBooks Online, meaning it's now in your accounts payable. Later, after the fact, then when you're paying the bill, it'll actually pay the bill. It will record the check that the checks came out, and all that takes place seamlessly without you ever having to actually open your QuickBooks and actually enter the transactions. So this is just a great way for you, and this is, like I said, I'm not promoting Bill.com. They're one of, like I said, many, and there's other bill paying apps too. But this just gives you an idea of some of the things that are out there, that this does not work as seamless with the residential program. Because the fact this is online, QuickBooks has made this that you can have other cloud-based applications to back end into the system to create a way for you to be truly paperless if you want to move into those environments. Another system that's on the thing is the QuickBooks Online Bill Pay. QuickBooks Online Bill Pay allows you to invoice people with the ability to receive an invoice, click a link, and actually pay them right online. And in the background of QuickBooks the whole time, when you send that invoice, it's recording the accounts receivable, and then when they pay it online, they pay that bill either with a credit card or an ACH payment. That payment then is getting recorded and deposited into your bank account automatically, which gets you paid fast. You're not waiting on the mail to get you back. But not only is it doing that, QuickBooks is actually recording those transactions without you actually recording it. It's applying that payment to the customer that you sent the bill to, and at the same time recording that it got deposited into your bank account. So all these things are happening seamlessly without you ever opening your QuickBooks. The benefit of this is that, again, this is where we're moving towards more the future of of accounting when it comes to how these things get done. And this is what I come back and saying, if you're doing the transactional data and you're manually entering all these things, you're going to find the desktop program quicker as of today. But if you're someone who's willing to move over to some of these other cloud-based applications, then you're going to find that the QuickBooks Online program is going to be your mode of choice. All right, disadvantages of QuickBooks Online. The biggest one is just you're going to have to learn new software. While it has the same functionality, the screens just don't look the same. So because of that, you're going to be learning, where do I do my bank recs? Where do I do these things? They're all going to operate fairly similarly. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to just jump in and use it immediately without having a little bit of where do I find this? I know the first few times when I used it a few years ago, the question, it took me a while to find out where in the world do I reconcile my bank account. It just didn't seem intuitive relative to the QuickBooks desktop program. It's not that it's difficult, it's just things are in different places. So in the end, most of the same functionalities there, it's just in a different place and it's figuring out where that is. The second biggest disadvantage, and we talked about this once before, is the speed is dependent upon internet speed. If you are using a slow connection, it's going to run really slow. And a lot of times too, you can't help that. Sometimes your fast internet speed, your internet goes down, all of a sudden you have to use your cell phone as your internet, those types of things. It's going to run really slow. And along with that, along with just the slow, if you do not have internet, you do not have access. And that's another big killer for some people, that they're just not willing to go about worrying about, well, if I don't have internet, I don't have my accounting programs, therefore I'm not willing to use it. I think today that issue is a lot less of a problem than it has been in the past, because internet's become quite speed of internet is fast in just about everybody, and when it comes to how well that it runs, meaning your downtime is normally fairly small relative to the rest of the year, relative to how it was maybe 10 years ago. And lastly, like I said, the other big disadvantage is the interface is slower if you're using the QuickBooks program online the same way you use the desktop program. Meaning if you're going to use the online program no differently than you were using your online program, and you're going to enter tons of transactions, and you're just going to get really frustrated, I feel like, with the interface. I know here at our firm here, we've had clients who are on the online program, yet they want to run it like the old way, and our accountants here get frustrated. It's slow because you're having to wait for every page to refresh. Even if you've got a great internet speed, it can be slower it's just slower than the desktop program. So I think that's the one disadvantage, that if you're not willing to move into some of these other applications, it can be a lot slower. So the question becomes, which QuickBooks Online version? They do have different versions. I include a web link here which will give you the pricing of how, and everybody who's attending this today, I'm going to send you a copy of these slides. And then if you're watching this later on YouTube, if you're going back to refresh mind, if you're seeing this for the first time on YouTube, I'm going to create a link that will give you also access to these slides. The QuickBooks, this gives you the pricing. The one thing I will tell you, if you are a client of our firm, we do have better pricing that we can get it. I think right now, if we order it for you, through ours, we don't get any money from it. It's just that because we're QuickBooks Pro, we're part of the QuickBooks Pro Advisor team with QuickBooks, we can get you, I think it's 40% off the first year of service. So your monthly fee will be 40% less than what it could be if you're just buying it straight. I think the pricing right now, QuickBooks is offering a promotion that's 30% off the first 6 months. Like I said, if you buy it through us, it's 40% off for the first 12. But if you go to that website, you'll be able to see the pricing and the different versions. And I'm not going to get into the different versions today within the QuickBooks Online, but if anybody has questions, feel free to call me or send me an email. I'm going to put my contact information up here in a little bit so that you can see it. If you have any questions, those things, feel free to come back and ask me questions about the specifics of things. And also at the same time too, I encourage anybody who's listening to this and watching this, if you have questions about either the desktop and the online version, which one might work better for you, feel free to pick up the phone and call us and any of our staff. I mean, our staff here has been using both fairly extensively. I think everybody has their own personal opinion. I was not a big fan of the online program originally, but more and more I work with it and see the benefits of it. I'm becoming a much more of a fan of it. But I still think there are some companies and organizations that it just definitely is not the right move for them. and others that there is, but that's the key thing with that. So I wanted to open it up. If we have any questions, you can type in your question on the GoToWebinar. If you have any specific questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. Around here is the question. Here's ways that you can reach me if you do have questions in the future. You can email me on my email address. You can call me on the phone. We do have a Twitter page, and it's at JagPC. I would encourage people, if you want to, add us to your Twitter page feed. We have all kinds of updates, different things as things come about, QuickBooks updates, you name it, things that are happening in the accounting realm that affect organizations and companies. We do that type of stuff. You can also send me a direct message. We do reply to those when we get them. And the same thing, you can find us on Facebook as well. If you want to like our page, again, you'll be able to get things like our newsletter and all those things through those pages as well. So I'd encourage you to do that.